Okay, one of the reflexes that the exam board like to test you on is the pupil reflex. So you really need to understand the structure of the eye and know all about the pupil and the iris. So if I try and draw some sort of eye, okay, something like this, okay, and then make the top eye a little bit big, but never mind. So there you go. So the coloured part around your eye is called the iris, which is basically a set of muscles, and then the bit in the middle is the pupil, which is effectively a hole that lets the light in. The clever thing about the eye is that the pupil can change the size and shape to regulate the amount of light in the eye, and it's done with two sets of muscles. Now if I draw just that part of the eye, the iris and the pupil, and make it a bit larger, I'll be able to draw you the two sorts of muscles. So if you have the pupil in the middle, which is the hole that lets the light in, there are basically two sets of muscles. There are muscles that radiate out from the centre, called radial muscles, and what they do is when they contract and get shorter, they pull the pupil wider to let more light in. And then there are circular muscles that go around the pupil like this, and when they contract, they pull the iris to the centre again and make the pupil smaller. So if you have a dark room where there are low light levels, and you have a bright room where there are high light levels, this is what happens. So if I draw the iris nice and big again, this time your pupil is what they call dilated to allow as much light into the eyeball as possible. And you'll see that the radial muscles are shorter and fatter because they have contracted and pulled the pupil open. Now muscles can only contract, so when you want the pupil to go narrow again, the circular muscles need to contract, and that will close the pupil again. So we say here, the pupil is dilated, and dilated means wider, lets more light in. Okay, so if we look at, if you've entered a bright room, the pupil will be smaller. In this case, all of the radial muscles will be stretched thin, but the circular muscles will have contracted, and they will have pulled the pupil closed, and these circular muscles will be fat because they've contracted. Now all of this is controlled by a reflex. So if we do our normal reflex arc, so in the eye there are light receptors, and you have your sensory nerve with its cell body stuck out on the branch, and you have the join between two nerves, and you have your relay nerve with its cell body in line, and then here you have the motor nerve with its cell body at the end, and its long axon, and then these end plates that will effectively be attached to the muscles in the iris. So you'll have your radial muscles and also your circular muscles. The radial muscles open the pupil and the circular muscles contract and close the pupil. So the muscles in this case, the iris muscles, are the effector, and you follow the normal reflex arc sequence, which is stimulus, receptor, sensory nerve, relay nerve, motor nerve, effector, which is the iris muscle. So here are the light levels, and the light levels on the stimulus picked up by the receptor. The message, the electrical message, is sent along the sensory nerve. That's the cell body. This here, the join between the two nerves, is your synapse. This is your relay neuron or relay nerve, and this is your motor nerve. So as you go along the reflex, stimulus, receptor, along the sensory nerve, relay nerve, motor nerve, effector, you can see the pathway of your reflex arc. Now, the exam question describes moving into a bright room or moving into a dark room and wants you to describe the stimulus. But in order to do that, you need to have some idea of the structure of the eye. I'll try and draw a diagram, a simple diagram of the eye, which will give you an idea. You need to pretty much draw a large circle from about, oh that's rubbish, from about there to there, okay? Now if you go around the front of the eye, that was rubbish, that bit there. What do I do? Let's try again here. Draw a large circle from there to there and leave the front bit closed. Now on the inside there, just go from here to here and put like another dome at the front, and that represents the clear window at the front of the eye, which is called the cornea. I'll go around. This is the white of the eye, called the sclerotic, and then you need to draw this coming out the back, which is the optic nerve. There you go. Now, inside the eye, you need to draw the light sensitive layer, which is the retina. Here, just put a little depression there, and go all the way around to about there. And to show the light receptors sticking straight up in the diagrams, you tend to notice that they've got these little striations at right angles to the circle that we've just drawn. Now this layer that we're drawing here like this is the light sensitive layer. That's got all of the receptors in all of the sensory nerves. So all of the receptors are in here, and they all go down the sensory nerves, which go down the optic nerve down here. blood supply for the eye is here, and all of these nerves come together in a big bundle down here, which are basically all of your dendrons for your sensory nerve. Okay, that's the big blood vessel. Now, a little bit more complicated here. I tend to draw the oval of the lens here now. So if I go like this and like this, that's your lens. You need to have your lens held by its ligaments, which are called the suspensory ligaments. And then draw this here and this here, and that kind of joins to there. And then from here over there, this is the iris. This is that sheet of muscle, ring of muscle, that can be drawn across or pulled away over the lens. And these are muscles here. So effectively, what happens is, light enters the eye and is picked up by the light receptors here. So these here are your light receptors, and they're in the light sensitive layer called the retina. This here is your optic nerve. Right, that bit there is the lens, that bit there is the cornea. These bits here are these bits of the iris. And this bit here, the hole in it, that's the pupil. So that can get wider or narrower based on the contraction of the circular or radial muscles. These bits you don't really need to know the names of, but they're called suspensory ligaments. And this is the ciliary muscle. And this bit, it's all held in place by is the ciliary body. On some diagrams you see a very thick dark line drawn around here, and that's a dark layer behind the retina, which I think is called the choroid, and basically it's to stop reflections. It stops the light bouncing around the inside of the eyeball because it's black. So basically, pupil reflex. You go into a dark room, low light levels are detected by the receptors in the sensory nerve. It goes along the sensory nerve, the relay nerve, the motor nerve, to the iris pupil, to the iris muscles, and the radial muscles will contract and pull the pupil wider, letting in more light. If you go into a bright room, the light goes into the eye, hits the receptors in the retina, sensory nerve, relay nerve, motor nerve, goes to the circular muscles in the iris, and that makes the circular muscles contract and pull the pupil cord, reducing the amount of light entering the eye. So that's how to draw and explain that. All of these things are about sequences. You need to know that the receptor are light receptors in this case, and that the effectors are the iris muscles. So you've got your radial muscles and you've got your circular muscles. Radial, pull it wider, circular, close it. Okay, hopefully you understand that. Keep watching it, keep trying to memorise it, and hopefully you'll be okay.